Guillemard Camp, once a bustling hub of military discipline and camaraderie, had become a place of uneasy whispers and shadowed corners. The tragic deaths of 3rd Sergeant Peter Poh and Corporal Michael Lim during a military exercise held in Brunei had cast a pall over the camp, leaving behind an air of unresolved dread. As the days turned into nights, the silence that enveloped Guillemard grew heavier, thick with unspoken fears and ghostly apparitions. It started subtly, with stories exchanged in hushed tones among the soldiers. They spoke of strange occurrences in the barracks, of cold drafts that seemed to emanate from nowhere, and of unseen presences that sent shivers down their spines. The atmosphere in the camp had shifted. The familiar routines were now underlined by an almost tangible sense of unease. One particularly eerie night, Private D'Souza, a new recruit, found himself on sentry duty. The moon hung low in the sky, its pale light casting eerie shadows across the camp. As D'Souza patrolled the empty corridors, a cold chill crept up his spine. The air around him seemed to thicken, becoming heavy and oppressive. Faint, indistinct whispers floated through the night, barely audible yet unmistakably there. D'Souza's pulse quickened. He turned a corner and froze. In the dim light, a figure stood in full uniform, his face obscured by shadows. The figure's stance was rigid, military perfect, but something about it felt deeply wrong. The air around the figure seemed to pulse with an otherworldly sadness, a sorrow that D'Souza could not comprehend. D'Souza called out asking who is there, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and curiosity. The figure stepped forward, the shadows peeling away to reveal a face that sent a jolt of terror through the terrified soldier. It was Peter. His eyes, empty and void of life, stared through D'Souza, as if looking into another realm entirely. "Help me," Peter's voice was a whisper, barely audible but laden with haunting despair. "Find the truth." Before D'Souza could react, a sudden gust of wind swept through the corridor. The figure vanished, leaving D'Souza standing alone, his heart pounding in his chest. He stumbled back, his mind reeling from the encounter. The story spread quickly through the camp, adding to the already thick aura of dread that hung over Guillemard Camp. In the days that followed, the whispers grew louder, the cold drafts more frequent. Soldiers reported hearing footsteps echoing through empty halls, and shadows seemed to move just beyond the edge of their vision. The presence of ghostly apparitions loomed large, a restless spirit searching for answers, justice, and peace. One evening, Corporal Lim was assigned to the night watch. He had heard the stories, but being a skeptic, he dismissed them as mere campfire tales. As he made his rounds, the night was unusually still. The wind seemed to hold its breath, and the usual sounds of the camp were absent. Around midnight, Lim felt a sudden drop in temperature. His breath became visible in the freezing air, an unnatural phenomenon in the humid climate of Singapore. He heard the faint sound of boots on gravel and turned sharply, but no one was there. The sound grew louder, more insistent, as if someone, or something, was approaching. Lim's flashlight flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. Panic clawed at his mind as he fumbled to turn it back on. When the light finally returned, he found himself face to face with the ghostly visage of Peter Poh. Lim gasped, stumbling backward, his heart hammering in his chest. "Peter," he whispered, barely able to speak. The apparition's eyes bore into him, filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed to consume the air around them. "You must help me," Peter's voice echoed through the night. "Find the truth." Lim's fear gave way to a strange determination. He nodded, and just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, leaving Lim alone in the cold, dark night. The encounter shook him to his core, and he knew he couldn't ignore Peter's plea. The next day, Lim gathered a few trusted comrades, sharing his experience and his resolve to uncover the truth behind Peter's death. They delved into the camp's records, combed through training logs, and interviewed anyone who might have information. The deeper they dug, the more they uncovered unsettling details about the conditions in Brunei and the lack of proper oversight. As the investigation progressed, the haunting in Guillemard grew more intense. The ghost of Peter seemed to become more agitated, his appearances more frequent and desperate. The soldiers experienced vivid nightmares, waking up with bruises and scratches that they couldn't explain. The camp was gripped by a palpable fear, the lines between the living and the dead blurring more each day. One night, Lim and his team decided to conduct a séance, hoping to communicate directly with Peter's spirit. They gathered in the old barracks, the room lit only by flickering candles. The air was thick with anticipation and dread as they joined hands and called out to Peter. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the candles. In the darkness, they heard Peter's voice, clearer than ever before. "Thank you for listening," he whispered. "The truth is near. Find the journal." The next day, following Peter's cryptic message, Lim and his team scoured the camp for the journal. They eventually found it hidden in a storage room, its pages filled with entries detailing the harsh conditions of the Brunei training, the unsanitary environment, and the neglect that the soldiers had endured. Armed with this new evidence, Lim approached the higher-ups once more. This time, they couldn't ignore the proof. An official investigation was launched, bringing to light the negligence that had led to Peter's tragic death. The truth, long buried, finally saw the light of day. As the truth was revealed, the hauntings ceased. The cold drafts vanished, and the shadows returned to their rightful places. Peter's spirit, finally at peace, no longer haunted Guillemard Camp. The soldiers who had witnessed the supernatural occurrences felt a sense of closure, knowing they had helped their fallen comrade find justice. Lim was very happy and satisfied that he helped in some way. He was smiling and feeling contented as he returned to his bunk. Very slowly, he opened his locker. In the reflection of the mirror hanging in his locker was Peter. The ghastly face held a fiendish smirk as he slowly utters the words. "Without the journal I have nowhere to go. But now I have you." The following week, Lim died mysteriously in Guillemard Camp. Cause of death is unknown.